Hello, welcome to the 12 Principles of Permaculture. We are on episode 10 already. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Today's principle is all about utilizing and placing value on diversity. I think this applies to both plants and animals, so let's focus on the plants portion first. We talked about how you can have plants work together to create mini ecosystems. So they're helping to repel pests and disease, they're attracting pollinators, but I think it goes beyond that, because anytime you're growing a wide array of cover crops, vegetable crops, fruit crops, you're going to create a nutrient panel that is going to be quite diverse. So different plants are going to give and take different things from the soil. The great thing about growing annuals is a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we eat, at least here in the States, tend to be annual crops. If you can grow those locally, that obviously reduces transportation costs, packaging. But if you can offset growing those annuals with perennials, you're going to introduce a lot of carbon into the soil because perennials tend to have a woodier tissue. You're going to have larger harvests because year after year they come back with more abundant harvests. But the thing that's really cool is you also invite wildlife into your homestead ecosystem. Plants that are perennials and stick around every single year, insects tune into that and they create their hives, their nests, they squirrel away under bark, and this helps to reduce pest pressure. So if you're going to grow just one massive field of monocrops, that's like an all-you-can-eat buffet for pests. But if you're doing polyculture and interplanting different plants, especially perennials, amongst those annuals, you're going to have predators to those pests naturally occurring. The other thing that I think is just something that people don't tend to think about, especially if you're making money off of your farm or homestead, growing more than one thing is sort of a financial insurance policy. So I remember long before I was a homesteader or a farmer, I had a graphic and website design business, and one of my clients was an apple orchard, and it was this very stunning orchard. But being in Minnesota, the Great White North, they're prone to very late season frost, which is going to absolutely wipe out the blossoms on the trees. And when that happens, there's no fruit set that year. And so I remember this particular year, my client had lost all of their fruit blossoms. And so they had no income. They weren't growing pears, they weren't growing nectarines. And not only that, but all of their apples were growing within the same pollinator groupings. So when you go through orchard trees, you're going to see pollinator group A, B, C, D, that sort of thing. And those groups, they indicate when the trees are going to set their blossoms. And so that's why you want to try to buy fruit trees of the same group so they're open at the same time and insects can cross-pollinate them. But the problem is, if you're only focusing on one pollinator group, on one species, and you get a late frost, you no longer have a harvest for the year, and that reduces the income greatly. So if you're open to growing more than one thing, obviously you're going to get subsequent harvests of different fruits or different apples and be able to still rely on your farm for income. Let's talk a little bit about animals. So I touched on in an episode pasture rotation recently. Intergrazing species, horses, sheep, ducks, it helps to break up parasitic cycles. So I won't repeat that here. But the other big perk is that different animals tend to eat different parts of the grass blade, if not a different plant altogether. So we have very grassy areas. We're in a wetland, we're in a lowland. And so if I let my grass grow tall, which is ideal in a regenerative grazing farm, there's a long grass blade. I let my horses grow through first and they eat the top of that grass blade. Then I let the sheep go through and they eat the lower portion. After that, we have the flock. So geese love grass, they'll eat anything that's remaining. But then I have the ducks and I have the guinea fowl that are breaking apart the manure. Goats, they would go through and prefer woody growth, weeds, as opposed to any of that grassy forage. So the different animals are going to start eating different things out of your pasture spaces. So now not only are they breaking up parasite life cycles, but you're completely evening out the forageable areas and making sure everything is evenly grazed. Obviously, as all of these different animals graze, they're all creating droppings and returning nutrients to the soil by way of fertilizer. But then the other thing that I think that is worth considering is that if I were to have an entire flock full of pekin ducks, for example, pekins, because they're heavyweight birds, are very prone to bumblefoot. If I had 40 pekins, that's a lot of bumblefoot I would be treating because of the way that they naturally carry themselves and they are heavier. They would be prone to a lot of scratches on their feet. That's a lot more treatment for me. If I have a handful of pekins and I put that in amongst a couple of other duck species, that's easier for me. But also it encourages a healthier flock. And then if they go to breed, yes, you can either do one of two things. You can either separate the breeds for species-specific breeding programs, or you could just create a barnyard mix. This is what we do here. So that's another reason why we use different animals here, is because we want to get away from having our flock prone to the same issues, the same disease, the same injuries. So I could go on and on about this a lot longer. This is just a brief overview. That's sort of the whole point of these mini podcasts. If you have anything to add, feel free to add it in the comments. We will return in a day or two with the second to last episode, principle number 11.